Hello everyone, and welcome to the Crypto Talks podcast. Today I'm talking to John Willlson, whom I met online on Facebook when I was just starting my journey down the rabbit hole in the crypto space. I started looking for different Facebook groups to get knowledge, to interact with like-minded people, to find out more about the whole space. So I ended up in a group which was called the Cryptocurrency Traders Lounge. And now it has over 4,000 members. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Funnily enough, I don't know what John does in his real life because I know him as the admin and creator of this big group. I know that he knows a bunch of stuff about crypto trading, but I also think it's not his main activity in life. So I'm giving the floor to him and let him introduce himself.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to have you as part of the group. It's really growing. It's amazing just how fast this is growing and how much demand there is right now for information about crypto.
Yeah.
So it's just like an inrush of people wanting to know what this is all about. Yeah, so my day job, I'm a physicist. And I work at a company it used to be a startup company, and then it was acquired. And I do a lot of optical modeling. That's sort of what my day job is. And it's a really fun job. So unlike a lot of people I see in this space who are like, yeah, I want to quit my job and trade crypto full time. That's not really my plan. I actually like my day job, but there's a lot of overlap in what I do. In terms of data analysis and modeling of complicated things, and with the crypto space. So that's kind of what drew me into the space when I saw sort of like all the intellectual challenges that were there and how hard trading is. That's kind of what just grabbed my attention. So that's the overlap there.
Okay, well, I can resonate because my grandfather was a very famous astrophysicist, and
oh, really? Who was he?
Well, he was in the Soviet times, amongst the Soviet Union times. His name was Ludwig Mirzoyan. So he was
okay.
He was from the first day when the astronomy was founded in Armenia. He was there from the roots. So I know. I know that it's very exciting sphere, and
Yeah.
I'm not surprised you don't want to leave it, for sure. So, how did you end up? I mean, obviously you've started in the space, and you were interested in the whole crypto thing way earlier than many of us, because many are just rushing in just now. So, what was your first introduction to the field, and how did you ended up being there?
Well, So what's interesting is I knew a guy several years ago who was into Bitcoin and who was talking about it. And you see a lot of memes going around now about people who were in Bitcoin from the early days, and everybody sort of thought they were crazy. And now everybody's like, wait a minute, tell me about this thing. I actually didn't get really into cryptocurrency until this year.
Ah, okay.
So I had... It was sort of spring of this year that I started reading about it, and I think Bitcoin caught a lot of people's attention when it sort of came out of its 2-year downtrend, and it sort of popped onto people's radars again. And as soon as I started reading about it, I started to see the sort of life-changing potential of this technology. Then that's when I sort of got completely obsessed. So I naturally love to sort of explain things and tell people about things. So I was telling my family about this, and I was reading about it all the time, and I decided to start writing. And I wrote about my early experiences trading and some of the emotional issues that crop up in trading, and that seemed to really resonate with a lot of people. And that's kind of what sort of started to draw people in. I got a lot of people saying, man, what you described in your article is exactly... My first article that really took off was about the feeling that you get when you see a coin pumping and you see the price going up, and you have this feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to buy now because it's going to go to the moon without me. Now's my last chance. And that's where a lot of people lose money, because it almost always comes back to the area where it broke out from before it really makes a sustained move. So that feeling is what sucks you in and makes you make bad decisions. So writing about that's kind of what started to put me on the radar.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that because I have noticed that many people who are just getting into that, they have this fear of missing out. As soon as the coin starts going up, they start buying. And then at some
Yeah.
point, when it goes down, they want to sell it because they are afraid that it will continue going down and they will lose even more. So rinse repeated several times, and whatever they invested may be completely lost because they were doing the wrong thing, although it may seem to them quite logical.
Exactly.
But I guess that is like the classic newbie mistake that everyone is doing by buying stuff when it really starts climbing fast and then selling it when it drops. So eventually they lose money on every deal, and if they do it too many times, then obviously the results are not going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Okay, so you mentioned the mindset, and I want to talk to you about that. The way I'm seeing this, obviously, people who are getting into it are people who are comfortable with taking risks, and because it's a risky field. So, is there any other personality trend in there apart from everyone being big risk takers in there? Are there any similarities of people who are into the crypto right now?
I think it tends to be people who are pretty analytic,
Mm.
and I think if you're wondering like what traits would make you a good trader or what traits are drawing people to the field.
Well, what type of people you ended up with these 4,000 people in a group who are obviously everyone is interested in crypto and somehow is related to it at some extent. So, are there any similarities from that big group of people that sort of you could see some trends among them, thinking that these are the type of people who are interested and are getting into it?
Yeah, actually, and it goes to sort of what Bitcoin is. Like on a big picture thing, Bitcoin is it's a movement of the people in a way.
Mm.
And one of the things that makes Bitcoin so fascinating is the part that gets mentioned sometimes, which is called permissionless. You don't need anybody's permission to use Bitcoin, and or any cryptocurrency, and you can't. No one can take your. So if I had $1 million worth of Bitcoin and I had and the government came after me and wanted to take my Bitcoin, they couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
They could threaten you, they could put you in jail, but they can't actually take it. Whereas if my money is in the bank, that money can be seized.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin in that way is permissionless, and it tends to draw people who have a certain disdain for authority, a certain sort of risk-taking, sort of freedom-seeking spirit, I think. And so it speaks to a lot of people. And this is a great, the macroeconomic climate, if you want to use those terms, is great for that kind of thing, because we're coming off of several years of really negative sentiment, like the 2008 sort of crash. And now that we're coming off of that and entering this sort of new era, it's a great time for sort of crazy speculative things like Bitcoin to gain legs and really take off. So.
Yeah, clear. So, tell us about your journey when you just started, when you got interested and you read stuff and you were attracted to Bitcoin and then other crypto. How was the journey like? Because, I personally had this experience of getting down the rabbit hole, and you sort of one small thing led to another, and then you end up digging and learning more and more stuff. So for me, it's been quite sort of very fast-paced experience of knowledge acquirement, of finding out things and meeting really interesting people along the way. So how was your journey? How did you start?
So it started similar to you. I started reading, and then once it really is a rabbit hole. Once you start reading, the first thing you want to understand is how does all this work, and what's the math behind it, what's the logic behind it. But then, there's sort of never-ending reading. So I joined a Facebook group. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I'm still in it. It's a really good group. I'll have to get the name for you. And there's a lot of really good discussion in that group, and I ended up meeting a guy there named Nick, who was doing like a robo trading kind of software, and I actually worked for him on the side a little bit and wrote a couple of articles, which we mentioned. So neither of us have actually put any money into Bitcoin from outside. So I was paid for that in Bitcoin, and I sort of made a rule for myself that I wanted that to be the only injection of money into Bitcoin, and I wanted to see what I could do with it from there. And that's sort of a way to limit the risk, because like you said, these are some of the highest reward and highest risk assets on the world. Not some of it; it is the probably highest risk, highest reward asset in the world. So the idea of somebody going all in or selling their house or this kind of thing to go into crypto is a bit insane.
Well, exactly. I mean, I just saw, I think it was on Facebook somewhere, probably on my timeline. Someone was asking if it's the right time to take a big loan and invested in Bitcoin.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, this is really, I mean, it's really nice that Bitcoin and blockchain in general are becoming popular, and more people who wouldn't otherwise be interested are getting into it in terms of, finding out what it is and learning a little bit more about the whole thing. But going into such extremes, I mean, I don't think it's very, I think the attraction factor completely hides the risks, and everyone thinks that it's an easy place to get into, and I don't know. I mean, it's very risky, so everyone should be aware about that.
Yeah, exactly. And taking out a loan, I mean, not only is it a terrible idea, but you don't need to. I mean, there's this old trading group. Have you ever heard of the Turtle Traders?
Oh no, I haven't.
So there was this guy on Wall Street years ago, gosh, this must have been in the 90s, and he was a very successful trader, and he was debating with one of his buddies, can you take a guy off the street and make him into a professional trader who would be successful? Oh. And what they decided to do was to sort of write down this code of how they made their trading decisions, and they brought in volunteers and they trained them. And the volunteers actually became extremely successful traders. They gave them a little bit of money, and I think over the next 10 years, they turned that into like $130 million. Wow. They were really successful. They had to follow, so if they didn't follow the rules exactly, they got kicked out. And a lot of them thought that they knew better and they would, alter the system. They always lost money. And the reason I mention that is because one of the rules for the turtle traders was that the more volatile an asset was, that is sort of the more ups and downs that it had on a day-to-day basis, the smaller position size they would take. So something was hugely varying, they would only put a small amount on it, and that gave them the same sort of risk-reward profile as putting a lot of money into a less volatile asset. So I sort of take that view with crypto. You need to treat this as something that's incredibly volatile. And I mean, if you don't believe that, just look back at, just pull up the chart and look at the lifetime history of Bitcoin or any of the currencies, and you can see that. So I guess what I tend to urge people is, and I try to do this in my group, is to urge caution and to have people think about how exposed they want to be. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of they should be mentally ready that they may lose it out, basically. So taking a loan or selling a house or going into these extremes, I don't think that's the right way and responsible way to look at it. On the other hand, you mentioned volatility, and obviously, yes, Bitcoin. At some point, there were days when it was several $100s back and forth during the day, even within few hours. So so that roller coaster in terms of mindset, in terms of the emotions, how are people coping with this? Because it's not a small difference. Jumps up and down all the time. So what is the best approach, like in terms of mindset, to look at it? Because I know some people who are literally freaking out.
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things. One of my favorite philosophies for dealing with that is called Stoicism, and I think anybody who's trading or into crypto in general should pick up a good book on Stoicism. There's one called something like the obstacle is the path.
Hmm.
This is sort of one of the best introductions to that philosophy, and I think that would help a lot. The other thing is I think picking when I say entry, like picking a good entry on whatever you're in, and then not over trading is critical.
Mm.
So buying the top, like right now, a lot of so I had somebody ask me yesterday, is now the time to buy Bitcoin? And I hesitate because it's so extended that if you buy in now, you're buying something that's very extended, which means you're exposed to a lot of downside risk, which means it's going to be very stressful. Even if you believe that Bitcoin has this enormous future, you're starting to hear numbers now. People used to talk about 10,000. Now that's like, well, that's nothing. I mean, obviously we're over that now, but it's like people are talking about 100,000, 250,000, or if you've heard McAfee's latest update, his prediction, he's saying, $1 million a coin. So these kind of crazy numbers are out there. But even if you believe that, still buying in at these levels means that you're going to have to really hang on tight and be willing to be exposed to a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So, looking at you, like, you obviously sort of have done loads of analysis. You have this group, so you also know people who are around crypto. You have the network. Yeah. How much of your day is dedicated to crypto? Because I know people who are doing it full time and who are into it all the time, sort of no ups and downs, read all the time, which is a little bit extreme. I'm not really sure that's the right way to move. So how are you balancing between, so to speak, real life and the crypto life?
That's a good question. Let's put it this way. I have a very patient girlfriend. So I have a day job. And I come home from that. I spend most evenings during the week reading about crypto or interacting on the group or staring at charts. Usually the first thing I'll do when I wake up is pull up the charts and see what happened overnight. The thing about crypto is, like, unlike Wall Street, we don't get a break on evenings and weekends. Yeah. So, I've got the charts up now, so I can just slide you sideways and see what Bitcoin's doing here. So yeah, I mean, a fair amount of time every night and in the morning for me is spent looking at the charts. One thing that has helped me a lot, when I first started trading, I made a mistake that a lot of beginners make, which is trading too often. Mm-hmm. And everybody's got their own style, but I think for a lot of people, trying to trade like 2-3 times a day, day trading, or even a few times a week is too much, unless you there's guys that do that and that's their thing. But I think for a lot of people, slowing down, observing and picking really good entries, I'm now to the point where 2 or 3 trades a month is kind of what I'm aiming for. I'm trying to have the patience to look for when a really good opportunity crops up and not feel the pressure of like, I've got to get in and I've got to, and I think that long-term approach will help people. I still spend a lot of time staring at the charts. And you have to do that. You have to get in screen time. Like, all the tutorials, all the lessons online, nothing's going to help as much as simply looking at the charts and seeing what's happening and sort of getting that intuitive feel for how these markets move.
Okay, so you mentioned you got into this about a year ago or so, which is still sort of, relatively early.
Oh yeah,
I just
old timer.
Yeah, so I just want to know what the reaction is of people who are not in the field to find out that what you're doing, and how easy it is to explain people what you're into.
So what's interesting is that when I got started, there was a little bit of interest. People would kind of listen to me and be like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Okay, well anyway, But now that's started to change like really rapidly, and it's gotten to the point where everybody's asking me, "Wait, aren't you into this thing? Like, what's going on?" Like, I think what's starting to happen now is like the amount of attention. Like, $10,000 is a big psychological barrier, and we blasted right through that, and that brought a lot of attention. So I think I think this Thanksgiving weekend was a big weekend for crypto because I think a lot of people who are into crypto were sitting around the Thanksgiving table and their family was like, all right, tell us about this. So what I think, I think what's about to happen, fingers crossed, is going to be pretty enormous. I hope crypto is ready for it. Sometimes these things can happen too fast, and and the infrastructure can't handle it. But yeah, it's so I guess what I'm saying is the interest level in what I'm doing has gone from kind of like, oh, that guy's a little bit wacky to like, wait, tell me about this. Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, before you didn't have the credibility, now it's sort of, you got the validation and now everyone is interested in what you're doing.
Yeah. There's this. Oh, go ahead.
It's easy to believe in something that is already proved, right? So it's
yeah, there's a lot of psychology to that, and everybody wants to be on the train that's the winning train. Have you heard of this concept called Eternal September?
No.
Well, so back when the internet was really small, there was this. There were basically these chat rooms, and every year when fall came, students would sign up at the universities, and they would get into these chat rooms, and all the students would be kind of these noobs who didn't really know the rules of the chat room. And so every September, these guys who have been in the chat rooms for years would deal with these noobs coming in, and it'd be like, all right, well, we've got to explain to these guys how it works, and they, initiate it. And that happened every September until one September, suddenly it was a never-ending flow. Like the noobs didn't keep coming in. It was one after another, and soon that's kind of what we're seeing in crypto now. You got these people that have been in since 2013, and there's a nickname for them. They call them OGs. I don't know if you've heard the term. I'm not sure what it stands for, whether it's the old guard. I've always wondered what OG stands for, right? So I think what these guys are starting to see is that there's going to be a never-ending flood of people. So what Eternal September became was the internet, and it still hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that this September is sort of becoming the Eternal September of crypto.
It's exciting at the same time. It's very interesting, but I see another trend, parallel to this. Apart from people who are interested, apart from people who want to learn, apart from people who start buying crypto, there are also many people. I personally know, I'm not going to name them, of course, but I personally know several online entrepreneurs, online marketers who are these, vegan jumpers. They just, they realize that there is this opportunity, there is this space,
right.
It's a hot topic, and they immediately rebranding themselves into Bitcoin and blockchain expert and started creating content around that, using the topic and sort of, pigtailing the topic and trying to squeeze into the field somehow. I mean, those are the people I have spoken about 2 months ago, a month ago. There was nothing about it. There was no interest whatsoever. And now suddenly, once this whole thing appeared, they ended up just trying to take advantage of the interest peak. So so I don't know how, because we spoke about the risk, we spoke about the importance of making people know that it is risky, about the importance of providing quality of the content and the objective views of things. So I'm a little bit skeptical and afraid about this whole group that is entering the field, branding themselves as experts, and what they are going to bring into the table. So do you, have any views or what people who have been there for quite a while, how do they see this trend and the risk of it damaging the reputation or whatever?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And there's going to be a lot. And these guys have been around for a while. So the whole space, like any space where money is involved is going to be full of scams. If I showed you the number of people I banned from the group on a daily basis who are just trying to scam people, and they all have the same thing, and it's promising if you if you invest this much, you'll make this much. It's almost copy and paste, right? So I probably ban 10 of those a day from the group, something like that. So yeah, you're in a space where, I mean, this is what happens where money's flowing is you're going to get scammers. And so people have to be really skeptical. And they have to, that's why I say, like, the best thing that you can get is education and to learn for yourself. I've mentioned this in the group a few times. I mean, there's different levels of scams. I mean, some of them are just outright scams, sort of Ponzi schemes. Like, what is the one that's been really big? Is it BitConnect? Am I saying the right one?
Bitcoin Connect, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's just straight up Ponzi schemes. Then you've got a sort of a different level is like there's these paid groups where you can join the group and you pay a certain amount and you get signals, buy and sell signals. There are some of those groups that are actually really good, and then there are some that are not. And telling the difference between those can be difficult. Some of the things that I would look out for if I'm on the lookout for someone who's trying to sort of, one of the things I look for is called the trappings of wealth. So if you see someone who's parading their Lamborghini, their house, their car, you see stacks of cash, you see them sitting on the beach. Why are they? Those are the trappings of wealth. Why are they showing you that? Like, anybody who's made serious money in crypto is going to be more than likely trying to not share the fact that they've got a lot of money, because that just exposes them as a target, right? So when you see something like that, that's a sign for caution. Another thing to look for if you're say looking at a paid group and you want to get education or signals is the size of the group. So one of the things is like scarcity is value, right? You can't have 10,000 people in a group and give calls to that group and have everyone succeed from that. Yeah. So one of the reasons I don't actually give calls in my group. I try to provide education, but it's rare that I'm going to say, oh, like, buy this or look into this. I mean, it's just the group is already too big to do stuff like that. So some of the best paid groups that I know have like 50 members, right? So looking at something where you've got 1,000 members and you're seeing the trappings of wealth, I say tread lightly.
Yeah, I see.
That's my thought.
So since we touched that, for those who are just starting and looking back at how you started, what is the best way? Where should one go for resources, for knowledge, for, I don't know, maybe even support? Or, I mean, I personally, to be honest, for me, it was a bit tricky reading all these materials, getting into this terminology and sort of techie mindset. And for me, it was much easier to just do interviews like this or talk to the people from the field and getting them in a human, simple, comprehensive language, explain stuff which is related or close to analogies from the real life. So, but that's just me. Probably, every person, learns differently. So what was your journey? How did you, which were the places where you learned stuff and it was like most credible and useful resource for you?
So one of the things that was great for me was Twitter, and you can go on Twitter and you can find, I mean, millions and millions of people posting charts and things like that, and you can follow these guys and you can start to see who actually sort of knows what they're doing and who doesn't, and so I started out following like hundreds of traders, and over time, I've whittled it down. I mean, I think at the end, I'm going to have about 10 guys that I follow on Twitter that really sort of not only know what they're doing, but also have a good way of explaining, where their thinking comes from. Some of the most popular Twitter accounts with, 30,000, 60,000 followers are not necessarily the guys that, maybe they know what they're doing, but they're not sharing a lot of information. So I think, I'm going to put together, I think one of the next articles I'm going to write is like something along the lines of, 7 or 10 Twitter accounts that you need to follow. So that's good. I get a lot of questions in my group, a lot of the same questions over and over. So we're going to try to put together sort of a frequently asked questions
Yeah.
from the group. I'm gonna try to kind of crowdsource it. I think what we might do is take like the top 5 questions and day by day go through those and let everybody sort of give their answer and sort of take the best answers and put those into a FAQ for getting people started. But yeah, so Twitter is great. I mean, you can do a lot of reading on Medium, but I think, oh, I don't have the book with me. There's a book that I would recommend almost anybody get, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But maybe I can send you that and you can put that into the show notes.
Yeah, I'll add it to the show notes for sure. And that article too, once you write that article about Twitter accounts, I'll add that too.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
So, in terms of the group and the engagement and the interaction, how what do you think? Is it more that people join this type of groups in the crypto world in order to gain knowledge, or in order to be among like-minded people? Because some of the people who are in crypto don't really, in real life, among their friends or family, don't really have the people who are in the field. Therefore, they can't discuss stuff or they can't be understood.
Good question. I think we've got some of both. So we have sort of a core group. I mean, I can look and I can see how, the stats on who's sort of participating the most. There's sort of a core group of us that, are like me. We're thinking about this all day, and we love to chat and, kind of find people who are like-minded. And then you've got a lot of people who are just in the group who want to know. I mean, one of the most common questions is, what should I buy? Okay, people come in and they've seen Bitcoin and they think, well, I've missed that train, although I'm not sure that's true. And then they learn about altcoins and they think, now I want to know what altcoin should I buy? And so they're coming to these groups to say, should I buy this? Should I buy that? I try to not let a lot of that in because, I'd rather people learn for themselves rather than come into the group and get someone saying, oh, hey, go buy this coin because it's going to do this and that. Well, I'd rather, they'll, teach someone to fish kind of thing. I'd like people to learn how to pick for themselves. So one of the things I've banned in the group is anybody saying, should I buy X coin, right? Mm. Should I buy this coin? Well, I don't allow that through because that's just never going to end well for the vast majority of people. Yeah,
I totally get that. So we all have these stories about paying with Bitcoin for pizza, and now it's, and all these, interesting stories that, back then, if I knew, and all that stuff. So looking back at your journey, what is the biggest mistake that now looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, how could I have done that?
Well, I want to comment on that. These stories are hilarious. And people say that not only with Bitcoin, but also something like Amazon, Apple. If I had just bought $1,000 worth of Amazon, and what is wrong with that? And what most people don't understand until they start trading is that if you buy something and you start to see it go up a lot, the pressure to sell becomes almost irresistible. So anybody who bought Bitcoin, say in 2013, or even 2011 or whatever, would have felt enormous pressure to sell it and probably didn't hold on to it. Probably, I think. So I have this theory that a lot of the Bitcoin millionaires these days followed this pattern. They got into smoking pot. They bought Bitcoin to buy pot online when that was the way that you could do it. They forgot that they had Bitcoin. They saw Bitcoin on the news a couple of months ago. They opened up their old computer and dug it out of the basement and found out they had a few hundred Bitcoins sitting around that they never spent on pot. That's how I think a lot of the Bitcoin millionaires were made. But the reason I'm saying that is because deciding when to sell when something is going up is actually almost as stressful as deciding when to buy. And that's something that I think you learn when you start trading. But as for mistakes that I made, overtrading was the two biggest mistakes I made. One was overtrading. So, trying to trade too many times a day. And that's really stressful, especially when the market's going on 24/7. But the second thing is not being aware of where you are. I talk a lot in my group about the market cycles and the phases of the market. And, with Bitcoin, we're in a bull market now, and the bull market is still on. The bull market is still valid. And when you're in a bull market, going long, and so for people watching who don't know exactly what that means, going long is just what you normally do when you buy something expecting it to go up, is going to win, has a higher likelihood of winning. And going short in a bull market, buying expecting to go down, is dangerous, especially at this point in this hyper extended bull market we're in. Unless you really know what you're doing, trying to short Bitcoin is a recipe for disaster. But that's because we're in a bull market. When we're in a bear market, which actually we saw a bear market for the altcoins almost the entire fall, trying to go long in a bear market is very difficult. And you can see a lot of people got wrecked this fall trying to buy altcoins when a lot of them lost like 80% of their value. So the very first question you need to ask yourself if you're trading is, what's the trend? What trend am I in now? Am I in a bull market, or am I in a bear market? Or there's, in between bull markets and bear markets, there's markets that are doing nothing. And in crypto, the bull markets and the bear markets come much quicker than in the stock market. We're looking at what is the bull bear trend? Is it every 8 years in the stock market? In crypto, it's like months, right? But that I think is the most important thing, is to understand what the trend is when you're getting in, and to adjust your trading style based on where you are in that trend.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So since we mentioned your group so many times, I just wanna, for those who are gonna listen to the audio version of it, just tell the URL for this to join. So it's facebook.com/groups/crypto traders lounge. So come and join. It's a really very positive place to be, with the right balance between the knowledge base and a bunch of positive people around who can support, advise, and just engage with you, which is really cool. So I didn't know anyone actually when I joined that group, from the group. So I was the complete outsider, so to speak. But still, from day one, everyone was quite supportive, and it was very easy to sort of like the place and to come back to it over and over again.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, we try to make all levels feel welcome, and that's try to maintain that positive vibe. So I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Okay, so to wrap it up, in general, there's so many, I don't know, controversial thoughts about Bitcoin. It's a bubble, it's not a bubble, the whole blockchain thing, whether it's as important as people claim or it's not really, and stuff like that. So if you had to sort of bring your point of view in terms of the future predictions of all this, what's going to happen long term, like 5 years, 10 years from now, what to expect from your perspective?
Well, I think I have a couple of things to say about that. One is, we get accused of being a bubble a lot, a speculative bubble. And you've heard a lot of these Wall Street guys say that. And it's been compared to tulips, right? There was a tulip bubble years ago that was insane. And I think I want to make a point, which is that speculative bubbles do occur, and they're not always bad. And so if you look at Amazon, it's interesting to go back to the stock price of Amazon, and you look at the dot-com bubble. Amazon was up to like $100 in the late 90s. And then when the dot-com burst, it was down to some insane level, like $8 or something. I have to check the chart. But now Amazon's trading around $1,100, right? So where Amazon is now, it completely dwarfs the dot-com bubble. And a lot of new technologies go through this phase. And the bubble is what puts them on the map. It's what gets everybody's attention. And even though that bubble bursts, it starts the real trend. Mm-hmm. And Bitcoin actually had a bubble in that burst in 2013, actually September 29th, which we just passed, which was kind of interesting. So it could be that that the bubble has already burst to Bitcoin a long time ago, and now we're in this phase that just is sort of. But either way, I think it does have life-changing potential, and I'll just like end with one example, which is Zimbabwe. Have you heard about Bitcoin in Zimbabwe?
Oh yeah, the hilarious rate, like the very high rate, right?
Yeah, so Bitcoin, I think I was looking today, is trading at around $17,500 in Zimbabwe. And you might think, well, why is that? Why don't I just load up the boat on Bitcoin, catch a plane to Zimbabwe, and I'll be rich? I can sell all my Bitcoin there for more money. But it has a lot to do with what's going on there. And I've learned a lot of this from my boss, who goes to Zimbabwe once a year to work with some of the orphans there. And the reason Bitcoin is so expensive there is because the Zimbabwean dollar collapsed. He has actually I've got a picture of this, a $10 billion Zimbabwe bill, and you can't even use that. You can't buy groceries with that, right? It's completely worthless. So in Zimbabwe, they've switched to the U.S. dollar as their currency. It's one of the more stable global currencies. But the banks don't let the people take their money because they probably don't have enough reserve. They don't have U.S. reserve. So if everybody went to the bank, you couldn't get your dollars, right? So what they do is they set a daily limit, which is really small, and you have to wait 2 hours in line to get your money. So what these guys in Zimbabwe are doing is buying Bitcoin. It's electronic, so you don't have to withdraw your money from the bank. So they are able to, that's why I say permissionless is this incredible word. They're taking their money back using Bitcoin. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's given them an off-ramp. And now imagine what's going to happen in Zimbabwe as Bitcoin continues to appreciate, right? Just because they're early adopters in a way because of the need for it, but it could bring it could bring wealth to a region that, has struggled for a long time. So that, I think, that kind of shows you the potential of Bitcoin to change the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the reason, just to go full circle, the reason you can't go to Zimbabwe now and profit by taking Bitcoin and selling it there is because you would sell it for dollars that are stuck in the bank, right? You can't get that money out. So that's why there's a premium. It's a risk premium there.
Yeah, clear.
So.
Okay, well, it was very interesting, very informative. So for more information, guys, go to the Cryptocurrency Traders Launch on Facebook, the group. There's tons of stuff there, so you can look at everything that is put out there. Loads of information, loads of encouragement, discussions, very healthy discussions out there, so go and check it out. And thank you very much for the interview. It was very useful, very valuable. I truly appreciate the time, and thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.